So we're only just over a week away now from Doom the Dark Ages, which launches on May 15th. It's one I've been excited for a long time now, and with each bit of information we get, each new trailer and each new snippet of gameplay, it is only looking better and better as the days go on, and it really does look like we might be in for another banger installment to the franchise with Doom the Dark Ages. Now, I think the thing that really stands out for me when it comes to this game compared to the previous Doom games, at least the modern now trilogy, I guess, is to do with the setting of this game. It is obviously very different from the previous Doom games, while still feeling very much like Doom, but it is definitely a different approach with that setting. Obviously, the previous Doom games do tend to have that sort of futuristic edge about them, while still being a pretty like hardcore metal underworld type of feeling. But with Doom the Dark Ages, this one definitely has a more medieval feel about it, while still obviously having some futuristic elements in terms of the weaponry and stuff like that. Now, the developers have actually confirmed that this game, or the setting used in this game anyway, was inspired by 3 other pieces of media. The first one being the original Doom, which I was going to say that sort of needs to be the case. You definitely want to base any upcoming game on the previous installments, so that is definitely good to hear. But the next 2 are definitely very interesting and not really what I expected to hear. The first one is the Dark Knight Returns graphic novel. That is something that they've really taken inspiration from. And then something that I am a big fan of, the movie 300 by Zack Snyder. That is another piece of media that they've actually used as inspiration for this setting, and that's kind of a prime example of what I mean by the sort of medieval feel about it. You can even see it down to the shield, for example. It very much does look like a typical Spartan shield, and so I can definitely see where those inspirations come from. Now, those 3 things combined, that is a very interesting group of media for them to pull from, and I think it has resulted in what looks to me like a very, very interesting setting that I cannot wait to jump into. Now, obviously, we know when it comes to Doom, it is a first-person shooter. There's obviously going to be guns, as there has always been in every Doom, and there always will be in the future. But one thing that is probably going to help it feel a little bit more medieval, as I mentioned before, is some of the new melee weapons that they've added in this game. Now, the first one that definitely stole the show when they first announced this game is the shield saw, which essentially turns that shield that I just mentioned, the very much Spartan looking shield, into a saw at the same time. So not only can you protect yourself with this, you can also deal a crazy amount of damage with it. And there's even gameplay of the player literally throwing this as if it is a Captain America shield, taking out waves of enemies before it returns back to them. So that is something I'm very keen to use. And like I said, it 100% stole the show when this game was first announced. Now, we've also seen some gameplay of some sort of mace, which looks really fun to use as well. And something else that looks awesome is the electrified gauntlet. And so it's fair to say they are definitely going all in on the melee side of this game as well. The guns and the overall weaponry of Doom have always been amazing, and that definitely looks to be the case in this game as well. But they're adding another layer there with some really, really cool melee weapons that are going to allow us to change the way we play. Now, before we go any further, if you guys are interested in more Doom the Dark Ages content, be sure to hit that subscribe button. There is plenty more content on the way, so make sure you don't miss out. Now, something else that I found really interesting in my research for this game is that they are going for a much more open world, or more likely an open zone type of system for this game, rather than being a purely linear type of shooter. The way that they've explained it is that you can essentially do any objective you want in any order, at least within each level anyway. So it's not like the entire game is one big level. Obviously, you will complete a level, there might be a cutscene or whatever, and then you'll move on to the next level of the game. But once you enter each of these levels, they are not really linear levels anymore. They're going to be a lot more open zone, meaning you can go out into the world and essentially do any of the objectives you want in any order, deciding how you want to approach that level before moving on to the next level. So that's something that is really interesting to see. I feel like it's going to make the game feel a lot bigger and grander, rather than being a typical linear story like we see in a lot of other single player FPS games. This one is almost stepping out into that open world type of game. Again, it's not really a full open world, but it is more of an open zone. But either way, I think if that's done properly, that could be a really, really great addition to the Doom franchise. Something else that's exciting to see is that there are now custom difficulty sliders as well. Doom has always kind of been known for having a pretty high skill ceiling in this game, and they've now made that even better with the ability to really crank up the difficulty, but also in more ways than just the overall difficulty. That's one issue that I do have with any game that has a high difficulty, is that sometimes the difference between, say, the hardest difficulty and the one below that can can be too big of a gap. So maybe the hardest one is too hard for you, but then you drop down and it feels a little bit too easy, because all those settings are really doing is just increasing the overall difficulty in a bunch of ways at once, and sometimes that doesn't really work. Now in this game we can obviously change the sliders for each different element of what makes the game difficult, and this just allows a lot more customization in terms of how hard you want the game to be, which for me personally is a really good change, and I'm very keen to see how deep they go with it. Now the final thing that I've noticed in the research for this game is that they are definitely going pretty grand with some of the levels that we can play. We've seen this huge demon mech that we're able to use in certain levels. They've confirmed this is a roughly 30-story tall mech, which is pretty insane. And so that's obviously going to transform the gameplay quite a bit during those levels. Now, the thing is though, this isn't just a gimmicky big mech with a gun where the gameplay isn't that deep. They have confirmed there's a full set of abilities and weapons and stuff for this demon mech, which I think is absolutely awesome. And these are some of the levels that I'm the most excited to play, because it really does look like it's going to completely transform our gameplay experience and probably keep the gameplay nice and fresh rather than just doing the same thing over and over again. Overall, it definitely seems like they are taking a bit of a new approach compared to Doom Eternal, which is definitely interesting to see because that game was very successful, so it would kind of make sense for them to just make a pretty similar game to that one. But the different approach here seems like one that they are really confident in, and so overall it seems like we might be in for a slightly different Doom experience to the previous two games in the franchise, and no doubt the previous Doom games before that. So I am very excited to see how it all goes, and from everything that I've seen so far, it really does look like this game is going to be a banger. But that is going to do it for this one, guys. I'm keen to hear all of your thoughts so far on Doom the Dark Ages, and like I said, there is plenty more content going over everything you need to know in the lead up to launch. So if you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.